Multi-factor authentication, MFA, is a company-wide setting that works across all service desks. If enabled, MFA requires Giva users to use a secondary form of authentication in addition to a login ID and password before they can log in. It's important to note that if your organization is using single sign-on or SSO, then we strongly recommend enabling MFA with your SSO identity provider instead of using Giva's MFA, which will help simplify things as the user will only be using MFA in one place. A Giva administrator can enable MFA on the Multi-Factor Authentication MFA administration page. If enabled, then there are three options on how MFA can be enforced. The first option is Enable MFA by Profile, which means MFA is enabled on a profile-by-profile basis. Any Giva user will have the option to use MFA if they want. MFA is not turned on by default, and each user can go to their password settings page to opt in to MFA. Only administrators, agents, and customers who have enabled MFA in their password settings will be required to use MFA. If desired, they can also disable MFA in their password settings at any time. The next option is Require MFA for all administrators and agents, which means anyone with an administrator or agent role in at least one service desk will be required to use MFA to log in. This setting is ideal for organizations that want an extra level of security by requiring administrators and agents to log in via MFA, but allowing customers to choose whether to opt in via their password settings page. The last option is Require MFA for all administrators, agents, and customers, which means every user is required to use MFA to log into Giva, and nobody will be able to opt out of MFA. Once MFA is enabled for the user, they will be required to go through the steps to set up their MFA device with the Giva system. Their device must have access to an MFA application that supports time-based one-time password, or TOTP. Example applications are Google or Microsoft Authenticator, Duo, 1Password, etc. Lastly, in a Giva user profile, if previously configured to allow MFA, it can be disabled, which will remove the MFA information from Giva, including backup codes and the requirement to use MFA to log in. If a Giva user temporarily misplaces their MFA device, they can use the backup codes to log in. However, if their MFA device is ever lost or broken, MFA can also be reset here for that user, which will require them to go through the MFA setup process with a new device before logging in.